Perfect. Kelvin, let's start with Charlie leaving the club. It's obviously sad to see him go. This seems a great deal for the club, and it's one of those transfers as well. I think you look at the reaction to it from fans, and it's understanding, and it's more gratitude than kind of disappointment.
Yeah, very much. I think it's a real mixed emotions one, because Charlie's not just a very good player, but also a good character around the place. So you never really want players to leave, but you also do want them to leave, because you want them to go on and do better, great things. And for financially, it was a good deal for the club. So mixed emotions, but I think as long as you get the right deal for the club, I think we should celebrate these moments just as much as have the sort of mixed sad feeling as well.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why he came, isn't he? He was a raw player that Keith had seen real potential in and had a promise to develop in, and it was always the case that if he did develop like Keith saw he would develop, then he would be sold on for a profit, for a chance to play in a high division as well. And now Keith's done that with the one player. Do you think that makes the club a more attractive proposition to other players similar to Charlie's position 12 months ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got to give. You look at Simon from the recruitment side of things and his team, and Simon identifying the right player, Simon identifying the right player and character that he feels will then mesh with Keith for Keith and his staff to be able to develop. There is a whole process behind that they obviously and getting. And then James and the club getting Charlie in on loan and doing that deal, and then doing the deal in the first place, because we did invest in Charlie, we paid money for Charlie, and that whole process. So it validates all of that process, and it validates it in terms of players that are looking at Northampton now, and even and I think going to a club like Brentford, who have a very similar model. Also helps that process too, and it validates it even further. So, Brentford now look at us and know that we will develop players, and they'll be looking at our players, and they'll be looking to help us with players, I'm sure, in the future, and all of it as a package. And someone like a Fraser coming in and will look at that and think he's got a chance to develop. We're actually excited about Fraser. I know. Fraser, because he came in on a free transfer, I think he's gone under the radar a little bit. But Fraser's a player that we did offer money for in the summer. It was turned down, but because of the relegation, he was out on a free. So that was probably the only reason he came out on a free. But he's a player that we've identified, and with a similar sort of process, and hopefully he comes in and kicks on. And I think it's something that players will look at us as a club and see the potential.
You mentioned earlier about the good financial deal that you got for Charlie, and obviously what was put out is the club record fee. One of the questions fans will ask is how much of that will be given to Keith, I suppose, and will that bolster his budget even a little bit?
Or given to Keith personally, or given to
exactly.
Keith,
Just shared around Keith and Simon, and then whatever's left we'll spend on players.
Given to Keith as a squad. Listen, as much as people do think, and I understand it, people do think that the transfers are only ever done in isolation, and it's almost like you're only ever working on one transfer or one budget. These discussions are ongoing all the way through, transfer windows, outside of transfer windows, all the time, in terms of, okay, if this happens, we can do this. If this happens, we can do that. And you also make assumptions, and you get to a point in any transfer deal where you start assuming that it's going to happen and planning for that. So some of those decisions have already been made in terms of the budget, and that it's not affected because suddenly the money's in the bank. And the reality is we just have to be so careful at this stage in terms of fans, and I think we'll talk about fans coming in and the lack of income. We learned a few years ago that it's probably not the best approach to suddenly go out and get hype but pay a lot of money for players. You've got to make sure you're recruiting the right ones, and that there has to be other characteristics before money that come into play on that. Now we learned that the hard way, so I think there'll be, we've talked about increasing the budget, and it does give us a bit more flexibility and a bit more leeway. But there are realities in the football club and it is a good financial deal, and we're proud of the fact that we got a good deal. We didn't just roll over and sell Charlie to the first bid, and we've protected ourselves in the long term in terms of add-ons and sell-ons, and I think Brentford feel like they probably got a very good deal as well. And I think in 18 months' time, or years' time, or I think they might think they got a really good deal when they actually see what Charlie can do. So yeah, it'll definitely help Keith in the budget, and it doesn't always mean, it doesn't necessarily mean transfers and we're going to suddenly spend it all on one player, etc., etc. It's not going to be the case. We'll take a calculated approach, and if a fee's required, it is. If it's not, then we're hoping to get an experienced player, and on a free transfer that typically would normally require a fee. So that shouldn't. I don't think that necessarily needs to be looked at negatively. I think that's actually a positive for negotiation. So we'll see. We'll see what happens over the next sort of couple of weeks.
And just a final one on this Charlie deal. Does it make you, as chairman, sleep a bit easier at night when you hear Keith, the amount of times he said to me and James about how he views kind of good housekeeping, as he puts it, at the club, and getting good deals for players, and he's had such a strong one of his real positives since he's coming as manager. He's had such a strong recruitment. The players he's brought in, you can say that by and large overwhelming successes. So does it make you that just a bit more comfortable with what's going on?
Did you say sleep well at night?
Yeah.
You've obviously not been a chairman of a football club. No, but yes. Yes, I think Keith's done a great job in terms of that, and his Simon and his team. I think the character, and it reminds me a lot of Chris Wilder in terms of, and I think with Chris, because he was a tight Yorkshireman at the time, or he is still a tight Yorkshireman, but I think Chris was very, very similar, and I think Keith, Keith even better in that way in some ways, in terms of how he doesn't feel like he's spending our money. He feels like he's spending his money, and he's always looking for a good deal, a fair deal. It's not like the reality is, it's not like we're looking to get everything on the cheap. We're just we're a very reasonable and fair club, and people fit within our budget. Now, other clubs may have different budgets, and other clubs may have different things, but we'll put character above the finances, but if in reality finances and character are tied, because if somebody's coming just for the finances, then sometimes you can question the character. So it's very intrinsically tied, and someone like Charlie, you look at what Charlie just did in terms of giving up, donating some of his money that he was due to the academy. That shows a character, and that's why, that's what Brentford would have identified in Charlie. It's what we identified in Charlie. You look at, Charlie coming back after breaking his cheekbone or his nose. I can't remember which, but he wore a mask. That's the sort of character that we like, and we're pleased that we've been able to do that, and it's what Brentford would have attracted, and it's that character is important.
Moving on then from Charlie, and just looking forward to next season. We've got the first pre-season friendly this weekend. The fixtures will come out tomorrow as well. And one of the big questions is still surrounding fans, isn't it? I suppose we saw the non-league announcement that below the National League North and South, below Brackley and Kettering, that some fans will be allowed in. What's the latest that you've heard on this?
Well, we haven't actually had any further direction. There's a lot of talk around it. There's a lot of work going on in the background nationally with the Football League and within the club. I know James and Avril are working very, very hard on our plans. But I think the assumptions remain. I think the assumptions are that the September games will probably be behind closed doors. There will be a streaming. I think the clubs will get an option how they stream the games. and one of the options will be, which I can assure our season ticket holders that will be taken up. Will, if available, season ticket holders will have access to free streaming for the first game or first couple of games of the season, and then October we're hoping to allow fans back in a controlled manner. James and the club's going to send out a survey next week to talk to our season ticket holders in regards to the bubbles, and because the indication is that people are going to be able to sit within their bubble. So if there's a family of four, there's a family of four, they can sit together. If there's two people to go together, and in the family, they can within their bubble they can sit together. So we're hoping, I wouldn't say expecting, but strongly hoping that all our season ticket holders will be able to get into the games, the first game, even if they are behind closed doors. We probably don't expect every season ticket holder to want to go to the first couple of games. I think there'll be maybe some of our older fans that will look at it and wait for a little bit longer. So part of the survey will cover that off as well. And I think the assumption is that fans won't be sitting exactly in their seats, and I think people will understand that. But I think you trust the club to try and get you as close as possible to your existing seat. But when you're talking about the bubbles, it's really hard to kind of control that. So all the assumptions are all still in place. That it's going to be different, and it's but that's what we're planning on, and we'd like to see. Our overriding principle is get as many fans back into the ground as is safe to do so. And we want to get fans in, and we, not just from an income perspective, but from an atmosphere perspective. So that's kind of where we're at with fans, and I think it will be a lot of it will be confirmed over the next sort of couple of weeks, I would have thought, or as we get to the start of the season.
And just from an income perspective, if we talk hypothetically, those are the restrictions that we're talking about there, and the plan that's laid out for October and the reintroduction of some fans, if that all goes ahead as it we've just laid out, how does it look financially for you, the start of the season?
Oh, it's not pretty. That's it. It's not straightforward. We've obviously adjusted our budgets. We've got what we would call a typical League One budget in terms of where we would normally be, and we're some way off of that. But we've got an adjusted budget which we'll be working towards, which will include, I don't actually think it includes crowds going in October, because we always budget conservatively. So we hope to, for example, good season tickets is a great example. So we actually budgeted for last year's season ticket number. Typically, we would expect a 15-20% increase on promotion, but we actually said no, we're going to budget on last season's number, and we're very, very pleasingly, and you can only thank the fans for this level of support, but we went above budget slightly. So we'll definitely have got more season ticket holders than last year, but it's not at the numbers that we would typically expect. But we feel comfortable because of our the budget we're working towards. So it definitely will have a financial impact. We're prepared for it, and we're ready for it, and obviously, if we can do good deals around the football, then that helps. But we're not panicking, and we think there's the Football League have discussed a package, and are in discussions, I think, with government and Premier League about a package to kind of try and mitigate some of the losses around fans not being in the ground. So we look forward to seeing what that looks like in the next couple of weeks to help on mitigating those losses. But the reality is, there's a reality that if tomorrow whenever the fixture's coming out on the Friday, the reality is if we get Sunderland at home, on the first game of the season, and there's no fans, that will have an impact, and they'll have a loss of income impact for us. And every club around the country is in the same position. So it is what it is. We'll deal with it as we normally deal with it, and we'll take it on the chin, and we'll deal with it and make the best of it.
Just a final one for me, and it's on everyone's favourite subject, the East Stand. And we've seen the kind of the club and the trust kind of butting heads a little bit, although they largely seem as if you're in agreement on a lot of things, and it's just a case of miscommunication. But what is the latest with that? Because we've seen over the last couple of weeks kind of statements from both sides agreeing and disagreeing with various points.
We wrote to the trust, almost 3 weeks ago, and they've been doing a bit in between, and they wrote back to us, and we offered a Zoom meeting. Let's talk about it, and I think today's Thursday. I think the last thing they put out was they've got a second board meeting, and they're going to send us some dates to do that meeting. So, which is good. It's a positive step, definitely. I think the real positive for us is that the trust have all the information. They've said that they're there to ask questions, and we welcome those questions. And I think they've now spoken to the council, and they've done their freedom of information. And I think the last one, it was a letter or something that said there was they got a 190, 200 page freedom of information response. So and nothing's come out of any of that says there's anything from the club's perspective that's been wrong or any wrongdoing or whatever. So that's good news for us, because that that allows us to confidently move forward. We obviously knew that, but it's good that the trust are able to confirm that in what they've said. So so now it's really a case of understanding. Now we're talking about the commercialities of the deal, which is what we've been talking with the council for a while in terms of. So it's understanding what the trust views are, but also understanding that we have to negotiate that with the council ourselves, and we've got to try and get on with that, and hopefully get the trust on board with how we feel and what our thoughts are on the commercialities of it, because the trust really should be working with the club in terms of, because they've now seen that what we're doing is in the best interest of the club. So we're looking forward to having that conversation and understanding the trust position a little bit further, and hopefully moving forward. It's a positive for us anyway.